Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Thursday, August 18th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Notre Dame game is in 16 days, the game against Michigan in exactly 100 days. BuckeyeHuddle.com is officially live. We had an incredible first day at the site. Thank you to everyone who signed up already, and if you haven't, please check it out and think about giving it a try for a month. Also, a quick reminder that the brand new Ohio State collection from Home Field Apparel launches this weekend. They call it Big News Saturday. Home Field is known for not only making some of the most comfortable t-shirts and sweatshirts around, but also using some just really cool, really unique vintage designs. It is completely unique in the marketplace. Stuff you're not going to see anywhere else. Definitely check it out at homefieldapparel.com. If you use the promo code Buckeye Weekly, all one word, no space, just Buckeye Weekly, you will save 15% off of your first order. Now on with the show. And to celebrate the launch of BuckeyeHuddle.com on Wednesday, a bunch of us from the staff took part in a 6-hour live stream on YouTube. It was a ton of fun. We got well over 1,000 comments and questions. Thank you to everyone who was a part of that. And we are planning to drop the whole thing as a bonus episode in the Buckeye Weekly podcast feed, so make sure you check that out. You will have more than enough Ohio State football content to last you for quite a while, even if you are a dedicated podcast listener. Part of that conversation was with Alex Gleitman. He is one of the recruiting analysts on the site, and Kevin Noonan and I talked to him about the recruiting business on the whole, this year's class, what Mark Pantoni actually does, and a lot more. It's kind of different stuff than we typically talk about with Alex on here. Normally, we're kind of on the in the nitty gritty and who's visiting this weekend and where do things stand with this one particular kid. So I thought you guys might enjoy that. So here is a part of that conversation. Let people know a little bit about when you got started in the recruiting business and how how you've kind of come along and that over the last, almost decade, right?
I think even longer than that now. So I was in school, call it the first decade of the 2000s at Ohio State, and we had me and like three buddies. We were just like super into Ohio State football. Obviously, it's hard not to be, and we decided, let's start our own little blog. And I was like into recruiting the most out of anyone, followed it the most. And I was going to be the recruiting guy. And we had someone focused on basketball and football and whatever else. And we started a little blog called Dotting the I Doc. I think it was maybe 2007, 2008. It was the back end of my college years. And, we actually got like a lot of traction. It was pretty good. But then summer hit. My friends decided that they would like to go out drinking and have fun more than keeping up with a blog that had gotten some traction. So I kind of kept it going by myself for a bit. And then, was fortunate enough, the guys at 11 Warriors, they were still in their infancy as well, pretty much at the time. They came to me, brought me on as one of I'd say I was maybe like fourth man in or so. I was there before Ramsey, actually. So I think it was Jason, Chris, and Corey at the time, and they brought me in as kind of the fourth, and was with 11 Warriors from about 2008 to 2013, covering recruiting as the primary recruiting analyst on that site. Got the opportunity to go over to Bucknuts and 24/7 Sports for about 5 more years after that, and then was with Kevin and Mark at Buckeye Grove, and that obviously resulted in us meeting all at Buckeye Scoop, and now here we are at Buckeye Huddle. So now this is almost 15 years going about this, and it's been awesome. I mean, I cover Rutgers as well right now, and when I was at 24/7, being out here on the East Coast, I got a chance to help cover some other for some other teams. And I'll say, I mean, I've never really covered Alabama or Georgia necessarily, but I mean, I can't imagine there being a better market than Ohio State. I mean, just there was the conversation on Twitter or whatever the other day. I saw Dave Biddle put it out that like this is the largest beat by far of any team, like college, pro, anything. And it's amazing how much appetite there is for Ohio State football from a media perspective. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think there's always the question, like, how many sites can the market possibly support? And it's like, well, we haven't hit that number yet, apparently, because it is, there are, a lot of times 40, sometimes even 50 people there covering just midweek press conferences. You'll be there in March covering spring ball, and it's like, why are there 45 people here at 8 a.m. on a Wednesday? Like, what is going on? It is a very unique market, a very unique team. But it's also, you look historically, and it is a team that has just functionally not been bad for the last 50 years. You've had, the little blips in the late 80s, early 90s, 2 bad years, 3 bad years, and the end of the Cooper early Tressel years, and then the 1 year in 2011. And outside of that, it's like, all right, that's it. That's the only time it's been bad in, the last 50 years. So you get that. You get the only major team. Sorry, Cincinnati, the only major Power 5 team in a state that is as big and as football crazy as Ohio. It's like, yeah, well, turns out, breaking news, there are a lot of Ohio State football fans. Who knew? So in the last 15 years of covering recruiting, things have obviously changed a lot. I mean, 15 years ago, social media was kind of just basically in its infancy. So what is the biggest thing that's changed in recruiting in the time that you've been covering the business?
Oh man, that's a good question. I mean, honestly, I think right now with what you're seeing with NIL and how it's the wild, wild west of recruiting, and the NCAA has no handle on it whatsoever. And even if they did, I'm not sure how much they can even enforce things. This is probably the craziest thing I've seen. Now, that said, I'll say with Ohio State, the biggest difference for me has been seeing the transition from starting to cover this team, a Jim Tressel coach team, and they, I guess the best way I've ever heard it described was they worked inside out. They started with Ohio and the Midwest region, and they filled in the needs outside of that with Florida, with California, with Texas, wherever they could pull guys from. But most of those classes were stemmed in Ohio, and then, stemmed in like that Midwest region, the Pittsburghs, the Indianas, the Illinois, etc. Now, I think, and social media probably has changed things so much as well, with the ability to communicate constantly and stay on top of things. But, Urban Meyer really brought Ohio State into the national recruiting scene. And it's not, at this point, it's get the 25 best players you can. It doesn't really matter where they're from. I mean, I know a lot of traditionalists may not want to hear that, but if you want to win national championships, you got to go out and get the 25 best players every single year, no matter where they're from. Ohio, Hawaii, Alaska, wherever that may be. So Ohio State's done that. Not Alaska, but Hawaii.
Yeah, Enoch Pamahi, offensive lineman from Hawaii, on the team right now. He's the first Buckeye from Hawaii since Scott Turner, who was a punter in the kind of early to mid 90s. I do a sort of recurring feature every year on the most recent Buckeyes from each state. Never had one from Alaska, Vermont. I don't think they've ever had one. A scholarship player from New Hampshire. Ironically, though, they do have a head coach from New Hampshire right now, which is a little weird. So this year's class, I mean, I think there's a lot going on right now, and it felt like, they're they're number 2 in the country right now, something like that for the 2023 class, give or take, depending on who you want to go to. But there was a period in like late July, early August, where it felt like the world was falling apart, and they were missing on guys, and they had some guys decommit, and it was, everyone was, running around and their pets' heads were falling off. And then you look and it's like, well, they're still number 2, and they just got another good commitment this week. And, where have they sort of, not that it was even necessarily a crisis, but have they sort of like stemmed the tide there? Is the class now, are they at a point where they feel like this class is fairly stable and kind of in the neighborhood of where they need it to be right now in this point of the process?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're in a great spot, and like one thing I've learned over the years is the highs are never as high as you think they are, and the lows are never as low as you think they are. And I know, as fans, I mean, look, we're making a business off of Ohio State fans freaking out or getting too cocky, too confident. So I probably should stop here. But at the end of the day, they'll figure it out. It will all work out, and it's not always about the guys you miss on. It's about who you get, becoming good players, developing. And I think Ohio State right now has a really strong class together. There are some, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Like, there are some positions that I think that they still have to fill the void on. I mean, I think defensive line is you look at who they're gonna lose this year, maybe next year, especially if JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer are what they think we are. Like, I think that they need to reload that room a little bit more. Linebacker, I think that they do have a lot of young talent on the roster, but with the portal and, everything that goes on in today's college football, they don't really have a true linebacker in this class. Offensive line, you would love for them to get kind of one more surefire type of prospect. I think the 4 that they have can and will be pretty good, but I would love to see them get one solidified, surefire guy like Olasolinen that they felt pretty good about. I'm not seeing them do anything much right now, Samson Okunlola, but someone like that would be, your ideal add to this class. So I do think that they do have some gaps to fill with the remaining spots that they have. But, I think right now you're in a position where you've got most of your class together. We feel pretty good about most of those guys sticking. And now you can kind of go 5-star chasing the rest of the way, which is a really nice position to be in, heading into the season where a lot of your focus as a coaching staff is going to be on getting ready for the games each and every week.
Well, the first one of those games is Notre Dame. We've obviously been talking about that quite a bit on this show for the last 3 hours and 40 minutes. But, from a recruiting perspective, that's a real big game as well, because we talked about that on a edition of Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning earlier this week. That is a loaded recruiting weekend. They're bringing in a lot of guys. You've got some current commits. You got a lot of targets for 23. You've got a bunch of official visits that weekend. You've got 24 guys, 25 guys. So you're sort of starting to build the groundwork at least a little bit with some of those guys. I guess, first of all, explain to people the difference between an official visit for a guy who comes in on a weekend in June versus an official visit for a guy who comes in for a game weekend. How different are those experiences? Because the coaches are obviously busy with a little bit of extra stuff during the fall weekends, but you also get to go to a game. So there's a little bit of a give and take there, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, I think they both can be very effective. I think seeing the game atmosphere, understanding what it's like to be a player on game day and a game weekend, I think that's a really valuable experience for one of these recruits to get. So when you come in the summer, I mean, all the focus is on recruiting. It's not that the red carpet isn't laid out in the fall, but I mean, from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed at night, the whole agenda is catered toward you as a recruit and focused on making your experience in Columbus amazing. And it's everything from the academic side to the campus tour, to the facility tour, to trying to show you what a day in the life looks like, to the nutritionist, to the strength and conditioning coach, to spending time with the players, to going out to dinner, doing some sort of fun activity. It's like what a fun summer weekend should be like, all expenses paid in Columbus, Ohio. Now, game weekend, I think you do get a lot of those things. I mean, all the things, the academics, the campus tours, the facility tours, etc. You may not have a coach with you at all times. You may have someone like a Mark Pantoni or an Aaron Dunstan, some of that support staff kind of taking the dorm tours with you instead of Jim Knowles taking that with you because he's got to get ready for the game. But, to my point earlier, you're getting to see a whole side of what it's like to be an Ohio State football player, going to class, that Friday walkthrough, the dinner the night before, game day morning, school session, being on the field before the game, being in the locker room after the game, hopefully celebrating a win after the game, and then, and just kind of being part of that whole experience. So it is a little different. I mean, you definitely don't get as much face time with the coaches, but a game like Notre Dame, where that's a night game, I mean, you're going to have an opportunity Friday, the staff's going to get to spend a good amount of time with you. Saturday throughout the day, they're just sitting around waiting. I mean, they're going to be able to get to have some meetings and spend some good time with you. And then hopefully Sunday, after they win, you're going to have some really good time before you fly out or drive out, depending on where you live. But it's a unique experience. I think being able to experience the Horseshoe at night, season opener, top 5 matchup, I don't know if you replicate it or replace in the summer. So there's pros and cons of both, but I think Ohio State's going to have a lot of success with that first weekend. And they got 40 plus guys already who are 4 stars or better attending that weekend. So it's going to be a big one.
All right, we got a great question on the screen right there. I want to get to that in a minute. I did want to talk about some of those 40 guys who are coming the week of that Notre Dame game.
When that's about Keon Keeley, they want to know that name for sure.
Yeah, so can you just kind of run through? We don't need the full list of 40 guys, but who are maybe, the 3 to 5 names that are the people who are, we talk about guys who are top of the board. Who are the guys who are maybe uncommitted towards the top of the board who are going to be there for that Notre Dame game that people should know?
Yeah, I'm going to go with two 2023 guys. Kevin already called him out. Keon Keeley, 5-star, currently committed to Notre Dame, although by the time that game rolls around, he may not be committed to Notre Dame. Damon Wilson, defensive end, another defensive end out of Florida. We talked about that position, being a big one that Ohio State needs to close on for the rest of this class. So those are two 5-stars or high 4-stars at minimum in Damon Wilson's case that if they show up as planned that weekend, that's going to be really important. And then 2024, honestly, it is loaded. Like, I'll say Jeremiah Smith because I think that they've got a great shot to land him. Wide receiver out of South Florida, 5-star type of player. But Sammy Brown's like a top 5 player on some sites at linebacker. And I think Clemson or Georgia are going to be really tough to beat there for him. But he was at Ohio State last year, had a great time. He's supposed to be there. Kingston Valamuasa from St. John Bosco, another linebacker. Potential 5-star kid, is really high on Ohio State, and same with the safety Peyton Woodyard. I think Ohio State's maybe the team to beat there for him. So those are just a few guys, but the list is, as I said, 40, 50 deep between 23, 24, and 25, and they're all 4-star kids or higher. So.
You mentioned a name earlier, and it was not a player name, it was a staff member name, Mark Pantoni. I think people probably have at least heard the name and have some idea who Mark Pantoni is, and he's somehow related to Ohio State's recruiting efforts and, sort of running those in general, but I don't know if people really know what Mark Pantoni does and why he's such a big part of the Ohio State football program on the whole. Can you sort of explain what his role is on the team and why is he someone, when you talk about it's Ryan Day, and then when they talk about other people who are in the program who are sort of staff people who are the most important in the program, you hear Mickey Marotti's name mentioned pretty quickly and you hear Mark Pantoni's name mentioned pretty quickly. So what does Mark Pantoni actually do behind the scenes to, with relation to the recruiting end of things?
I would almost ask you, what doesn't he do, as probably an easier question to answer. But yeah, I mean, he literally does everything. So he's now, I think his title got elevated this past offseason to general manager. He was previously director of player personnel. So he's overseeing the whole recruiting department. And that's just not the director of player personnel, assistant director of player personnel, the on-campus recruiting staff. That's also like the creative services team. So the video guys, the social media guys, the graphic designers, all of everything that is going toward efforts of hyping up the program and getting that material in front of recruits, whether that be, as I said, on the creative side or the actual like recruiting visit efforts, evaluation side of things. He is overseeing all of that. So a lot of people are like, well, he's just an administrator, or he's just, a guy who's very organized or can talk to recruits on social media. But he actually spends probably thousands, if not tens of thousands of hours watching film. And ultimately, he and his group are basically the first line of defense when it comes to evaluations on players. So whether that's in person, but mostly on film, like they are going through thousands of hours of film watching pretty much every single player that they possibly can to kind of fill out Ohio State's recruiting boards. And then they're managing that. They are then creating the boards, going over it with each position coach and Ryan Day, and managing the recruitments of all the players on those boards. So everything from planning recruits' visits to planning the materials that get in front of recruits in the mail, on social media, whatever that may be, to actually evaluating players and being active participants in recruiting those players alongside the coaching staff. I mean, that's all in his purview. So at the end of the day, when every signing day, I mean, everyone always looks to the head coach or the position coaches or whatever. I think Mark Pantoni feels that that's a reflection of the work that his team did that past recruiting cycle, which is not only a year, it's 2, 3, 4 years potentially in the making.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about. Go ahead.
I was going to say, jump in with a question. Tom brought up Mark Pantoni and his role. I want to bring up somebody who's not one of the 10 assistant coaches, but constantly gets mentioned with Keenan Bailey. Just how important has Keenan Bailey been to the whole process?
Yeah, first of all, it's incredible that they've been able to hold on to him because he's a guy for now 5 years or so, 4 or 5 years. I've been hearing this guy is going to be a future star in this industry, or he is a future star in this industry. He's going to be a star. And I think, when the NCAA approves expanding the coaching staff and no limits, I won't be shocked if the first promotion that Ohio State announces is Keenan Bailey. He's just been on the field, whether it's been quarterbacks or receivers, whatever he's been helping with. I mean, the players sing his praises. And then, Kevin, you do the Southern swing and you talk to recruits, and me and Mark talk to recruits, especially in those, he's from South Florida. I believe he went to Notre Dame, but he's from that South Florida area. And especially any time where he's involved in a recruitment, whether it's position-wise or that region, they're not just talking about Brian Hartline. They're talking about Keenan Bailey as well. Sometimes even first out of their mouth. Like, my relationship with Coach Key is, better than with any other coach. And it's been unbelievable what he's been able to bring. And I think some of the guys that they brought on this offseason are going to bring some more of that. Matt Guerreri, guys like that. You're starting to see them more and more involved. And I think if and when they expand the coaching staff sizes and allow guys maybe like a Mark Pantoni to go on the road as well to evaluate and visit kids, I think Ohio State is going to be really well positioned because they've done a great job not only building out their 10 coaching staff roster, but beyond that as well.
And I know, Alex, you got to get going in a few minutes. We appreciate you stopping by, but let people know you are obviously part of the team at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Let people know what they can sort of expect from you moving forward. You have been killing it the last couple of weeks with a lot of coverage and a lot of breaking some news on some recruitments and all that kind of fun stuff. Let people know kind of what they can expect from you in terms of, as members at BuckeyeHuddle.com, what are they going to see from you over the next month or next year, depending on how they sign up?
Yeah, for sure. Before I get into that, I did see a question from FW Buckeye. I'm going to make your day, Tom.
Oh, I saw that. Sorry, I forgot about that one.
The question was, who's going to make it further in the playoffs, the Mets or the Yankees? Tom's a Mets fan. I'm a Yankees fan. I'm actually going to the game tonight. That's why I'm wearing this. I wasn't trying to be obnoxious to Tom. But I'm going to say the Mets. I think they're just better positioned to make a run right now with the team that they have versus the Yankees, who are an absolute dumpster fire at the moment. If you thought Ohio State recruiting was bad, take that level, lower it like 30 notches, and that's the level the Yankees are playing at right now. I'm hoping Kevin's Dodgers can beat the Mets so that I don't have to deal with the Mets being in the World Series this year. But with Walker Buehler out, and I don't know what else is going on with Kershaw and things like that.
They're getting Dustin May back on Saturday.
All right, that's big. But all right, anyway, back to your question, Tom. So, A-Deck every single week. So that's for those of you who aren't familiar, that's my kind of like insider column, mostly focused on recruiting, but could touch on some team stuff when I have it. I'm also going to be doing a second written piece, kind of like a VIP type piece every single week. It's not necessarily going to be the same every week. Like, for example, I just spoke to someone earlier, got some great stuff on the team now that we're a little bit more in the camp. I'll probably put that on the site for our paying subscribers tomorrow. So that's an example of that. During the season, I used to do like a Gleitman's game day guide thing with some of my betting picks and some other insights, thoughts on the college football playoff, who to root for, who not to root for. So we'll be rotating that. And then, I am going to have a podcast. It won't be every week like it was on the last site, but I think it's going to be semi-regular. And I think I want to get, me and Mark together as much as possible to talk about the big recruiting stories. Obviously, things like the Notre Dame recruiting weekend, or when we have a commitment that, comes on board, like Jaden Bonsu, being able to kind of do that. So I think that's what you can expect on a regular basis. And then obviously, I heard Mark on your show this morning talk about, we're going to have the stories when the kids visit. We're going to recap their visits, all that stuff. But our goal for the paying members of the site is, anyone could call up a kid or message a kid on social and get some of those quotes. What's really going on in the recruitment? What's really going on with the team? And that's the type of stuff that I want to try to provide on a weekly basis for our subscribers.
And maybe my favorite feature of the whole year is at the end of the class, when everyone is sort of signed, sealed, and delivered, then you do kind of like, here's the inside story. Here's what actually happened that we couldn't, the stories we couldn't necessarily tell you earlier in the cycle. That always comes out kind of, February, March-ish. and is always one of the most popular features of the year. And you will hear Alex on the morning show, probably once a week, give or take, throughout the course of the year. We will talk about some of the stuff. There's always stuff that we don't talk about on the shows that is behind the paywall. So if you want the full story on the full story on everything on inside the team, recruiting, the real stories behind all that stuff, got to become a member at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Now, again, you can find that whole episode, the whole 6-hour live stream. The plan is to put that in the Buckeye Weekly podcast feed. It's obviously a lot about the Buckeyes, but it ends up as kind of a meandering conversation touching on a ton of different topics. Who's the best bowler among Tony and Kevin and I? Kevin shares some barbecue secrets. He is a very, very serious barbecuer and smoker. Lots of different topics. What should they do with St. John Arena? What's the next thing they need to build in terms of athletic facilities at Ohio State? All sorts of different stuff. So we touched it. You asked us pretty much everything. We answered pretty much everything. So make sure you check that out in the Buckeye Weekly podcast feed. And then also, please make sure you check out BuckeyeHuddle.com. It is a fantastic team. Truly a talented group of people who have been doing this a long time. We really were excited to all get a chance to stay together, keep working together. You can find us all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Give it a shot for a month. $12.99 a month, $124.99 if you want to just pay for the whole year. Pretty good deal. And a month is the price, like I say, of a lousy chain store pizza. So $12.99. Save yourself the calories. Sign up at BuckeyeHuddle.com today. That'll do it for this morning. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.